right again from the Kurt's Place channel here on the YouTube. This is going to be this video that's going to basically explain to you how my HyperPin pinball machine cabinet is put together. Basically what it has to power the cabinet and how everything's put together inside. This will give you an idea of how you can build your own HyperPin cabinet if you'd like to. Let's start with the computer, shall we? Okay, what we basically have on this HyperPin cabinet that I made is this is another one of the computers that I built from the ground up. I'm going to give you all the specifics on this computer so you know exactly what's involved in this. Okay, what you see in front of you, this basically is the inside of the computer that I'm currently running to run my HyperPin cabinet. What we have on top here, we have a 750 watt power supply. The reason I went with a 750 watt power supply is, if you notice, the power supply has power that also goes down to the graphics card here. The graphics card that I'm running here, I'm going to tell you about that in just a second. Basically, so we have a 750 watt power supply. Okay, we have a Western Seagate, we have a Western Seagate 500 gigabyte hard drive in here that also runs as well. So Western Seagate, it's a regular hard drive that's in this bay right here. Okay, we also have a CD-ROM on top here as well that runs on top as well. The processing power inside this, the processor basically inside here, this is an AMD Phenom 2 ×4 970 processor, Black Edition. That's basically what's running this cabinet right now that you're seeing in front of you. This computer has 2 gigabytes of RAM. And the thing that you want to keep in mind is, when you're building a computer like this, the one thing I highly stress is that you get as good a graphics card as you can. Now this computer currently right now that I have in here, this is running a GTX 560 Ti processor made by NVIDIA. The one thing to keep in mind about a processor is, the computer that I have in front of you, basically this computer is probably 5 to 10 years old. This has been in my game room for a while, prior to my arcade machines. So of course, if you go on the internet now, they're going to have newer things now than what I currently have here. But this basically, for my needs, handles everything that I need just fine. When I'm playing pinball machines and things like that, and I have multi-ball situations and stuff like Apollo 13, Medieval Madness, I don't have any slowdown at all in the gameplay with this computer. This powers everything just fine, and I don't have any overheating problems or anything else too. Now, the only thing bad about having a setup like this is the one thing you have to keep in mind with a setup like this is, it's going to be kind of expensive when you set it up. When I put this pinball cabinet together, and this is probably 5 or 10 years ago, I had a budget of about $3,000, and I spent almost $3,000 putting this cabinet together. Now, keep in mind that the prices and stuff vary on parts and things depending on when you're buying your cabinet. Now, of course, some of the prices and things that come down on some of the things that I have. So, of course, probably if you were to build one with the same specs that I have, would probably be a little bit cheaper than it was when I built it. But the thing to keep in mind is, when you're going to build a HyperPin cabinet, it's better to go a little overboard than not enough, because there's nothing worse than having a pinball cabinet when you play it, when you get like multi-ball, that the pinball machine starts to lag in speed. And that's one of the reasons why, when you're going to power your HyperPin cabinet, you might actually be better in some cases going with a smaller monitor and spending some of that money on getting a faster PC to run everything, because you're gonna thank yourself in the long run for having that. I wanted to show you something on the back of the computer as well here, on the back of the computer as well. Now, if you'll notice in the back of the computer also, if you're also going to notice that I currently am running, right now I'm running I run 2 video cards. I have 2 video cards. There's one here, one powers the monitor here, and one powers the monitor here. So basically on the back of this, one of these goes to one monitor, goes to the back glass monitor, and the other one also goes to the playfield monitor. I also have the internet cable and everything attached to, so I can have the internet and everything running in here. I also have my X-Arcade build your own kit running in here. That's what handles all the pinball functions that the pinball machine has, and I'm going to show you a demonstration of later. And then I have my speakers plugging in here, and this basically just gives you a really good overview of what the actual computer and everything looks like that runs the HyperPin. Now, one of the things I was going to mention to you is, when you go to set up HyperPin, I'm not going to get in a lot of detail on setting up the HyperPin software itself. It's a fairly involved process. What I suggest you do when you go to set up HyperPin, I suggest that you go, there's 2 places to go. I go to a place called if you type in HyperPin in Google, there's a place called, there's a HyperPin forum boards that are going to tell you how to set up HyperPin. There's also a place called Visual Pinball. if you go to those websites, they're going to have things such as where you can download ROMs to run the pinball machines, all the different types of tables that people have made, and also how to set up things like when you're running visual pinball, when you run hyperpin, how to set up things like the backlist images and other things like that. That's one of the resources that I went to set up my pinball machine. Now, when you're setting up your pinball machine to run software, the main thing is you got to practice patience. You can buy pre-made pinball machines and everything on the internet that have the pinball games already installed, but the real fun for me is building one of my own. Now, something you're going to notice about my pinball cabinet here, you're going to notice that it's not a full-size cabinet. This basically is designed so I can sit down here and play. Now you're going to notice like the back box and everything, this is not a full-size cabinet. I basically went, my setup that I have for my needs, I basically had a 30-inch monitor and I had a 21-inch back box monitor. Now I only ran 2 monitors on my computer. Now you're going to see a lot of hyperpin cabinets that will run 3 monitors. They'll have two main monitors. They'll have a back box monitor, a playfield monitor, and a DMD display or a DMD display to run the DMD display. They'll have an LCD for the DMD, or they'll actually have a DMD player itself. Now the thing to keep in mind is there's nothing wrong with running a three-screen setup. If you'd like to do it, feel free to do so. The problem that I had when I tried to run 3-screen setups is every time I tried to run 3 screens, I always ran into a lot of problems where I couldn't get anything to work right. I just got to the point where I said, you know what, I'm going to make it, this is before I actually built my cabinet, so I'm just going to make it simple. I'm going to run a 2-screen setup. And I got to tell you, I'm really glad I did that because I saved myself, I think, a lot of headaches and everything in the long run. It doesn't mean that I don't like the 3-screen versions. I think they're great too. If you have the means to build one and everything, by all means do so if you'd like to. I encourage you if you have the means to do so.